setup. And the problem with traditional treatment is we ask you to just white knuckle it now and force your way into not doing this through all the talk therapy in the world. But talk therapy does not increase your neurotransmitters. Nutrition does. So to me, I saw it as a lopsided proposition. Like, we're teaching you to white knuckle it, but we're giving you no help. So of course you're going to relapse because your brain does not have the expanded capacity to deal with that. You're not running on full. Your tank is low and it's hard to drive 1,000 miles when you have 2 gallons of gas, right? And when we add naltrexone in, that helps somewhat because it helps block the use of your neurotransmitters. So when you put naltrexone in, it blocks the endorphins. So you're not going to be using up the endorphins like you would if you didn't have it. So that's a start. So, okay, it brings it up a little bit. But the other side is, in order to get the capacity to follow through with the naltrexone and the naltrexone working better, so when you're not taking the naltrexone, you feel great. So that when you do take the naltrexone, you notice a more significant difference of how well I feel versus what the drug is doing for me.
Welcome everybody to Thrive Alcohol Recovery. This is Katie Lane, and I have a very special guest with me here today. I have with me Dr. Michele Perron, which I was just thinking, we were having such an amazing conversation before I hit record, and I was like, I wish this was recording because just the way you talk and articulate things related to moderate drinking and really helping an individual become empowered over alcohol, like you just have such a gift with speaking about these things in a way that doesn't feel judgmental and just honestly normalizes issues with alcohol. So sorry for everyone. We were having a great conversation and it wasn't recorded, but I'm sure this conversation will be just as great. I've known you, Michele. Gosh, you were on the TSM meetups, like back before I started Thrive. What was that, like 2019, 2018? Do you remember?
Yeah, it had to be. Mm-hmm.
So for those who don't know, Dr. Perron, she's a positive psychologist and a moderate drinking expert. She uses not only the Sinclair Method, but a comprehensive toolbox to help people overcome problem drinking, including nutrition and amino acid therapy and a lot of mindset work, just how we think about our drinking. And she's been affiliated with Thrive for several years now. She leads workshops for us on a variety of topics every month. And I wanted to have you on. I was thinking, why haven't I had Michele on sooner? Because you're just such a gift to this field. But she's been in the treatment field, I think, for almost 20 years now. Like you said, going on 18, working in different
all
clinics.
levels of care. Yep.
All levels of care, all types of addiction. So I'm going to let you just talk a bit about yourself for people who don't know you. So what is your work? What got you into this field? And what do you do today to help people with addictions or alcohol addiction?
Okay. Well, hi. Thank you so much for having me on today. And thank you for the lovely introduction. And I want to start by saying I have been thrilled to be affiliated with Thrive and having that ability to do the workshops, which keeps me fresh and interested and gives me a reason to continue researching and finding out more so I can bring more to clients. And so I can, make a better fit for people and really help them with what they're struggling with. So I thank you for that. It's great to be able to kind of be in the field rather than in a silo that we tend to be. And so yeah, so I got into alcohol and drug counseling almost 20 years ago as a result of going through a divorce from someone who was a substance abuser and multiple substances. And so it was so devastating. And I realized that I had a part in that when I was, a friend of mine suggested I go to Al-Anon. So I went to Al-Anon and I learned an awful lot about codependency, which led to writing a book, which then led to teaching that book in, of all places, our jail. So for 3 years, I went to the jail and talked about the 12 steps in the spirit of codependency and relationships. And it was fun because I was so fearful of public speaking, but the universe put me in a place where I was locked in and couldn't run out the door, like by 3 locked doors to get to the room, and with criminals that were like kind of scary. We had some, significant, like really heinous crime people, and then just your regular DWI folks or car accident people who survived and shouldn't have been driving or whatever. So it was a whole lot of people with not a lot of judgment, and so that we could just be very real together. And then from there, I decided I would take the show on the road and see if I could present at treatment centers. And I did find a treatment center who was open, but they said, we can't let you in the room without a license. So I went back to school. I had a master's degree at that point in business, actually, but I went back to school and got certified in the state of Minnesota as an alcohol and drug counselor. And in short notice, like within 3 years, I'm like, this is just not enough. So I went back to school and I got my PhD. And so at that point, then I was able to move from a different agency. And then I went online 8 years ago and became a clinical supervisor there, which I absolutely loved. And then after 8 years, the company decided to merge with a traditional treatment and mental health company, at which point they were not interested in the moderation program that I had developed. So I spent 8 years taking one group of 8 people who wanted to moderate, which was kind of a new idea, especially then. And 8 years ago, online treatment was very new and they didn't think it would work. And so we kind of pioneered that field and really developed it. So I started adding to the one group, and then it became 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and became 10 groups of 10 people over time. So in the course of 8 years, probably treated over 500 people. I had a team of, or more, I had a team of 10 specially trained master's degree therapists who knew how to administer this and the languaging of it. And it went really well until the merger, and the traditional mental health company said, we don't want a moderation program. That's not kosher. So they said, thank you and goodbye. So they left myself and my program, which had 93 people in it, kind of high and dry to find a new home. And so we did start something temporarily. I think some of it still runs. There's a company called drinkshrinks.com if you want to check that out. And then I went out on my own to start building on what I had learned. And then I became applied positive psychology certified and amino acid therapy certified. And so those were things that I now know are key to the different languaging, writing curriculum, and helping people understand concepts. So that's
Yeah.
how I got here. I'm out on my own, starting over.
Well, and it's so with the positive psychology, because I think that's one of your gifts. And I've told you before that like the way you say things, it's very sticky, it's concise, it's memorable, it's almost like a mantra. And it gets people out of this thinking of like, oh, I'm an addict or I'm an alcoholic, I'm never going to change. So talk to me about like why you're not in the traditional alcohol recovery space of abstinence, 12 steps, and like what you use today to help people, I mean, drink moderately or have the ideal relationship with alcohol that they want to have. Like, why don't you kind of go down the traditional path, if you will? Like, what is your work?
Well, I spent 10 years in the traditional path at all levels of care, from detox through inpatient, high intensity inpatient, outpatient, extended care, men, women, adolescents, short of going to the hospital to do assessments. I've seen it all. And what I saw, now AA is, I'm not going to knock it because it does a lot of good for a lot of people. However, sobriety is hard fought. And there is a stigma. You count your days sober, and there's a stigma when you relapse and you have to start over. So you can have a year sober, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is. And when your number, when you have that first drink, even if it's a sip, like you're in trouble and now you have to start over. And it's very rigid that way. And if you've worked with people who suffer and struggle with substance use, rigid doesn't work for any of us. Just doesn't work. So I saw the cycle perpetuated. Trying to figure out why they were feeding young men donuts for breakfast didn't make sense. I'd come from a bodybuilding background in my 20s, and I'm like, no, they need protein. I had something sticking, and I was always interested in nutrition. And I later found out that the starving brain is, in fact, a huge component of health and wellness, especially in addiction. So we're going to talk about that as we go. But I saw that system was a repeating door system. And I thought, who's benefiting from that? And so, like all things, follow the money, right? And that's when I said, I can't do this anymore. And then I went online, found a job online, and it was really slow to start with, but I stayed on. And that company started with 16 counselors. And within a few months, I was a clinical supervisor because it just I made sense to me with a PhD that I should be in that role, and it just kind of fell into it. We had 16 total counselors. When they merged, we had 120 counselors. We had hundreds of groups, and our census was nearly 1,000. In fact, I think in the last January we had just hit 1,000 for about a week. So it was a very, going from like 300-400 patient or clients to over 1,000. So it was like really fun to grow with that company and develop and go. It was just a lot of fun, and it was a very like family feeling. We liked each other. We knew each other. We had a lot of like places you could go for water cooler talks, and we knew each other was sitting at the desk, not in the same state.
Yeah.
So it was very close knit, which was very rewarding for work. And so it was very sad for a lot of us who did not continue with the company when they merged.
Yeah.
But it was great.
I mean,
It lasted.
the fact that it grew like it did just speaks to the fact that there's a need and a desire for people to have that option to drink moderately, because thus far recovery has really been seen as, like you said, rigid, or this black and white lens. And
Yep.
we're measuring recovery like, are you sober? Okay, cool, you're in recovery. But like, we're not talking about the craving or their emotional well-being necessarily. I mean, certainly some programs are, but for me, it's like the craving that wasn't talked about at all. And I'm like, I'm dying inside with this mental chatter from alcohol. I'm not drinking, but I'm still like imprisoned by the addiction. You talked about the starving brain, which I know you help a lot of people who are on the Sinclair Method, and the people in our program, what they love about you is you complement that with nutrition and amino acid therapy, and really thinking about how can I take care of my brain and my mental health as I'm healing from, years or decades of drinking. So can you tell us more about the starving brain and what we need to know about it, especially if someone's still, in the thick of their drinking, like what's going on with the starving brain?
So the starving brain can become a starving brain from not only like over drinking alcohol or using, drugs of abuse. That's one way. The other way is stress, constant anxiety, depression, poor diet, aging because we don't digest as well as we do when we're younger. And so that's the setup. And the problem with traditional treatment is we ask you to just white knuckle it now and force your way into not doing this through all the talk therapy in the world. But talk therapy does not increase your neurotransmitters. Nutrition does. So to me, I saw it as a lopsided proposition. Like, we're teaching you to white knuckle it, but we're giving you no help. So of course you're going to relapse because your brain does not have the expanded capacity to deal with that. You're not running on full. Your tank is low, and it's hard to drive 1,000 miles when you have 2 gallons of gas, right? And when we add naltrexone in, that helps somewhat because it helps block the use of your neurotransmitters. So when you put naltrexone in, it blocks the endorphins. So you're not going to be using up the endorphins like you would if you didn't have it. So that's a start. So, okay, it brings it up a little bit. But the other side is, in order to get the capacity to follow through with the naltrexone, and the naltrexone working better, so when you're not taking the naltrexone, you feel great. So that when you do take the naltrexone, you notice a more significant difference of how well I feel versus what the drug is doing for me. And if you have no drug, now it's even a bigger disparity. Like, you'll see that I'm sleeping better. I don't get grumpy. I'm not craving food. I'm not depressed. I don't have highs and lows. Like, I start to even out and I'm calm. And I've had so many clients come back to me and say, everyone's coming to me and saying, oh, you're so much different. So traditional treatment was not working for me over time as I saw my clients struggle. And when I found naltrexone, I reached out to Claudia Christian right away going, I've seen miracles with this. Like, wow. I wish I could remember patient zero who got me turned on to naltrexone, but I went for it to learn all about it and met Claudia and worked as a coach for her for a while, and then moved on to different places until now I'm working for myself. But I saw naltrexone as a game changer because I saw it change so many lives within my program. That was one of the things we offered online under traditional treatment was when you got done with your mainstream treatment, they would give an interview saying, do you plan on drinking for later in life? Like, or are you done? And they'd say, well, I think I'll probably, try it again someday when I feel ready. And they'd say, instead of going to aftercare, why don't you go into our moderation program so you can learn to drink? And that's where I cut my teeth. All these people who, finally said, well, no, I don't want to quit forever. And then one day my director said to me, oh, well, you're just treating people with mild use disorder, right? I'm like, no. She said, what do you mean? I said, every single person qualifies in my program has a diagnosis of severe alcohol use disorder. So what I have now come to is I'm not treating AUD. I'm not treating substance use disorder or alcohol use disorder. I'm actually treating normal people who just want to control their drinking. Because
Yes.
alcohol, anyone who's enjoyed alcohol has had the, excessive drinking episode. That's universal. So let's call it what it is and cope with it in a better way.
Yeah.
And that's what I do now. There's no judgment, because have I had nights when I've had too much to drink? Absolutely. I'm human. I went through college. I went through the rites of passage, and divorces and, the emotional things we have as human beings. And alcohol is very effective. It's not all bad. It keeps people alive, believe it or not, in the most dire circumstances, because it gives them the strength to face adversity when they don't feel they have the capacity, and it's not all bad. If it were, it would not be in cultures around the world if
Right.
it was only bad.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, just that alone, like rephrasing how we talk about it gets people out of this shame spiral. Like, you don't have to call yourself an addict or an alcoholic. You're just somebody who happens to drink too much. And guess what? There's lots of really effective treatments that can help you cut back. And I think what I see in your work, like you said something years ago that I think always stuck with me. You're like, drinking isn't the problem, excessive drinking is the problem. And so in our traditional recovery, we've kind of demonized alcohol, but like you said, it's
yes.
culturally available everywhere. And I wholeheartedly agree that having a, moderate relationship with alcohol, that's not the problem. It's the excessive drinking that's a problem. So can you talk a bit about that? Like in your positive psychology and these sticky phrases you have to like help people start thinking about their drinking differently. Can you share kind of the work that you do there just to get people in a frame of mind that's more about healing and empowerment and encouragement and not like you're an addict and you have to quit drinking kind of thing?
Yeah. First of all, what always stuck in my craw, if you will, was this idea that Jesus made wine at a wedding. So wine is mentioned in the Bible. So if it was just corrupt and bad, would that have happened? Like, providing you believe in Jesus and the story, which I was raised Christian, so I take that as honest, right? So that was always a thing that was never reconcilable with the abstinence-based idea, right? And I think first of all, that wine had to be organic without additives or chemicals or things that make it taste funny or blended from grapes all over, the entire nation. And so those sorts of things became, sorry about the phone, should be, sorry. So those types of things became very hard to justify with clients. So what I did was like, okay, let's talk about overall health. So the way that I start with clients is not so much to let's just jump into your use, but let's talk about how are we thinking about alcohol. So like you said, one of my key phrases is drinking's not the problem. And of course, that's heretical when you're an alcohol drug counselor. You don't go around saying that. And it took me a while to be comfortable with actually saying that, because excessive drinking is the problem. A glass of wine on your birthday or Christmas or New Year's or, 3 days a week, one glass of wine, maybe two if it's a special anniversary or something, or three if you're a man, you can have a little more. But it's that ability to regulate down to where your body can manage it. That's important. So the problem is excessive, not just enjoying a glass of wine. And wine has changed over the centuries. We want to look for organic, high quality, good wines. Maybe the stuff in a box isn't so good. Try something a little better. Treat your, so your liver doesn't have to work as hard. And as you age, we have to know that volume has to decrease over time, because you metabolize slower, your blood volume goes down as you age, your digestion changes, your liver changes over time. Just by virtue of walking the planet, you wouldn't even have to touch wine, but by the time you're 70, 80, your body's working differently. So we have to bear in mind the whole picture. So that's one of them. The other one is the saying that I say a lot to people: we drink to celebrate, not obliterate. So if you drink on a mission, people will say to me, well, what's the point of having just one or two? And I say, exactly. What is the point? Why would anyone want to do that? And that's because it stops becoming the tool to get intoxicated and obliterated, and it becomes a companion to a good steak or chocolate or my birthday or a barbecue. That, like the barbecue doesn't light without a beer, right? That sort of stuff. So you just start putting it in context, and I really support appropriate for the set and setting, appropriate drinking. And is it appropriate to go to someone's wedding and wipe yourself out and fall off your shoes, or have a terrible toast that you'll never live down and you'll be ostracized for that reason? Like, is that like social drinking? That's another favorite of mine. The first word in that idea is social, and the second word is drinking, because the first word is more important. So being social means I'm going to have conversations. I'm going to remember those conversations. I'm going to make memories. Because the number one thing that alcohol does when we have too much is to erase memories. And as human beings, the more memories we have, the fuller our lives, the happier we are, especially if they're good memories. As we get older, as we get wiser, we're making good memories. Why would we want to wipe them out?
Yeah.
Right?
I love that you said we drink to celebrate, not to obliterate, right? And I think the longer I was on naltrexone and TSM, I did get that in that frame where like alcohol became like the special treat that I would save for like 1 or 2 days a week or going out to dinner. And it wasn't like this habitual thing that I used and didn't really appreciate, I guess you could say. But I know you know this, and I'm thinking of people who are on the Sinclair method and kind of stuck in, maybe they're having a couple alcohol-free days a week, but they're still drinking at home by themselves 5 nights a week. And they recognize they're caught in this habit, but life is stressful and they're bored or they're in retirement. How do you get people to start thinking about or acting differently in your work that you do with them, who are in that kind of routine, that ritual, and they're not sure how to get out of it? I just know a lot of people that are in that place. So I'm curious what your thoughts would be there.
Yeah, I start with that drinking autopsy. Like, what is the pressure, the unseen allostatic load, if you will, that regular daily tension that we carry? What is the pressure that is causing you to need that drink on a regular daily basis? So we do this autopsy where I start asking questions about the last time you drank and what was that? Is that typical? What time of day do you start? What is it at the end of the day that is your trigger? If you start, most people start after 3 or 4. Well, that often, if you grew up in a household where there was yelling or you had to be fearful and run to your room, a lot of that times it will be triggered by the 3:30, 4 o'clock, because as a kid you came home from school, and if there was problems at home, you'd know before you even opened the front door. You'd know whose car was parked in the driveway, and if I can go in and drop my backpack on the kitchen floor and open the fridge for 10 minutes, or if I had to scurry to my room and stay there till I was called for dinner, or hopefully scurry out and get dinner, because unfortunately a lot of households can have that happening. And so that can be a trigger. Something in the remote past can be the trigger, and we call that trauma amnesia. And there is a treatment for that. There is a method that you can resolve that and don't have to live with that trigger. Sometimes it's that. Other times it's you had a job and you came home at that day and you wanted to leave your stress at work, but the only way you could do that is to, drink a bottle of wine to leave your stress. And so it becomes a habit that way. Or sometimes someone else starts drinking, and so, well, you're just going to drink because they're drinking, and maybe they're bigger and male, or maybe they're farther along in their journey and they've got a high tolerance, and so you're trying to keep up with that issue. Or or maybe you have a friend group happy hour, right? Sometimes people have a drink or two and go home, and other times they're closing the bar at 1 a.m. So it just depends on what your routine is, who are the people you surround yourself with, and where do you want to go with it. So that's what I do. I start to pick apart and get the details of the daily use. And if we can't figure it out like in one session, I have people journal. Like, before you start drinking, take your pill and then take 5 minutes to write down how am I feeling right now. And then come back next week and we'll talk about what you wrote over the last week, because they make their own best detective. because I'm not at home with them.
Right. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I guess I'm curious too for people who maybe have been drinking for decades and they have no frame of reference for like, this is what my life could look like if I'm drinking 2 days a week instead of 7 days a week, for example. How do
Yeah.
you get them to start having a vision for a life that's beyond their daily routine or rut or ritual, whatever you want to call it, of their drinking, and so they can start, thinking differently in that way?
I love that question. No one's ever asked me that question because that's my favorite part about what I do. And that is finding out what my dad used to say is what makes people tick. What is their excitement? What lights them up? And as we talk about different things, I'll ask lots of questions and get to know them as a person. I'm very interested in the people I work with. And that's not fake. I actually have an interest in other human beings and their health and well-being and their happiness. Because if other people are happy, I'm happy. We're all happy. And when we rise, all boats rise, right? So what I like to do is find out what their interests were when they were children, what they enjoy doing, and then then my mind works in such a way that I can turn that into what if. What if, for instance, someone likes to paint, but they don't, they used to paint in college or whatever. It's like, well, what if you went and bought some paints and maybe you spent an hour painting in between drinking and taking your pill and drinking? Or, what if you focus on X rather than Y? Or what if, and then that could turn into this. I once had a client who was an engineer working in his office from home remotely. And he had the best speaking voice when he would present homework. He had a lovely voice, like soothing. And I said, you should be reading books, like Audible books. Like you have a voice that was absolutely wonderful. Could you consider doing that? Well, had a lot of anxiety. So through the miracle of tapping, within 4 months, he was no longer suffering from anxiety. He was able to get out of the house and drive. Otherwise, he was home. And on the side, he decided to put in a sample of his reading to Audible and I think one of the Headspace like apps that do meditation. So he cut a few of those, and sure enough, he is now featured on some of those apps because his reading voice is beautiful. And so he started doing that on the side. And because I said, you have a great reading voice, your writing is beautiful, you should be recording your voice. Like, I'd like to listen to you reading. And that was something he never thought of, didn't think he could do it. And then his career, he just took off with it. And it's exciting. He's done some other more famous books, but I won't mention. I don't want to keep him anonymous. But yeah, he ended up doing some pretty great work. And so it's really exciting now to accidentally run into him on an app or something.
And I think that's the beauty of working with somebody through this journey, because you reflected back to him things you saw in him that maybe he didn't or couldn't see in himself. And yeah, I wanted to highlight that and go back to something you said before we hit record. And forgive me, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but it was around like how people get stuck in a cycle because they've never been like told who they really are or what they're really capable of. And so they have no frame of reference for that. So they've just kind of settled for the addiction cycle they're stuck in or whatever. Do you know what I'm talking about? And can you speak
Yes.
to that?
Yeah. And if anyone remembers the movie, The Scent of a Woman,
I
and
never saw
and
it. Is it good? Should I see
good.
it?
Yes, you should see
Okay.
it. They're at one point they're dancing the tango, and they're having a conversation somewhere in the movie, and he said, "I've never seen anything sadder in my life." And the main character is blind, or just about going blind. And he said, "I've never been seen anything sadder than in my life than a person with an amputated spirit," and that's what long-term significant addiction does. It amputates the dream. It kills the vision. It kills the notion that I could become and self-actualize. And so that is such an important part of human growth and development. It keeps us alive, it keeps us enthusiastic, it keeps us happy to be self-actualized. So when I meet people who are, swimming at the bottom near the muck and they're stuck there, it's often because they've never been taught about their assets. And I don't mean financial assets, I mean character assets, where they can blossom and naturally do the things they do well and the things they really love. And to find out if if you never bake a cake, you don't know if you're a baker, right? And you don't know. And people say, well, so what? I like to make cakes. Well, what if you make a wedding cake for somebody? And wedding's a significant thing. And then you bring it and then they eat it. And it's a wonderful cake because you baked it with excitement and love. And then someone else eats it and goes, oh my God, did you taste our wedding cake? And then now you're making more wedding cakes and you're charging more. And now you're not sitting in an office anymore. You're a wedding cake baker because that's what you love to do. And that's sort of like your loves can become your passion. And that's what's lost when people become addicted, if we're going to use that word, when we're overdoing. See, we're meant to live in a Goldilocks zone, right? The temperature can't be too high or too low. The water you can't drink too much or not enough. You have to hydrate properly. You can't eat too much of one thing or not. You can't exercise too much or not exercise at all. Everything and I think this comes from my veterinary medical background long time ago, about how to keep animals in a zoo. Human beings are animals that need the right temperature, the right humidity, the right amount of sleep, the right amount of exercise. And it's about operating within that Goldilocks zone so that we can maximize our potential. And once we get that right, then all of a sudden we can play. And I think that's kind of what we're meant to do, to play with our imagination rather than having it, educated out of us, but to actually play with our imagination about what we love so that we can become fully actualized. And when we medicate, whether it's with medication or with mood altering substances, alcohol, weed, whatever, we crush the ability to play and to imagine and, ride a stick around and call it a horse like we did when we were children. And that's what I really love to work with people. That's the part when I can have someone dreaming again and seeing the possibility and being excited and following through with some things, going, wow, I didn't expect that. And then there it is. And that's the best part of coaching.
Yeah. This is speaking to me so much because when I was on the Sinclair Method, I clearly remember getting to a point where I didn't know how to have fun without alcohol. And I think a lot of people feel that way, that we needed alcohol to feel playful and joyful and fun. And realizing that I needed to tap into this sense of play and joy in me to, progress on the healing journey. I just remember that so clearly for myself. And I mean, I would do simple things like bake cookies or bake a cake or go for a bike ride. And for me, it was like starting really small with these things and, progressing from there. And sometimes I think people can feel paralyzed because they just don't even know how to take the first step necessarily. Or maybe putting too much pressure on themselves that they have to be perfect with the first step. Like they need to sign up for music lessons and like commit. But really, I guess if you could speak to that, like how do people take that first step if they feel like they're stuck in this rut? And yeah.
This brings to mind a client that I had a few years ago, and he was father of two, probably 40-ish plus or minus a few years, and he was the life of the party. And when he came to me, he really didn't want to give up drinking altogether, but his family was asking him to do that, so we worked with that and got to moderation first, and I think eventually ended up stopping, but that was after he and I had stopped working together, just giving me information, backstory. But one of the first things we did was, okay, you love to have the party. Tell me what you like about it. He goes, well, I can stand at the grill and cook and make jokes and make people laugh. And people really like me when I'm drunk. And when I'm not drunk, they say I'm too serious. So I said, I want you to experiment. Like you're having a barbecue next weekend, on Friday night, or whatever. You're having friends over. Maybe it was a Saturday. And I said, what if you try being that person that you are when you're drunk without drinking? Because I said, if that's really releasing your true nature, maybe you actually are lighthearted. What if you truly are a lighthearted, fun guy, but that you've just been afraid to be that person? But it's hiding in there and gets uncovered when you drink. So he's like, well, so that worked on him for 3 or 4 days. And then he had his barbecue. And then we met the following week and he said, you know something? I did that. And at first I was a little uncomfortable, but he said, but then I started to get into it. And I'm like, and then people were laughing and he was laughing and his sense of humor was still there. His ability to have, be quick-witted was still there. And he had never experimented or played with that before. So he found out that he was actually the lighthearted, loving, fun guy without alcohol as well. And now, not everyone has this overnight sort of experience, but that was one that really stuck with me because it was like, go ahead and try that. That's who you really are. And
Yeah.
he did, and it was.
Like dipping your toe in the water, you have to take the first step. And then
Mhm.
when you get that exposure and realize, oh, you survived it and it was actually fun, it's like, oh, wow, okay, maybe
Yeah.
I can do this. And again, when we're stuck in that cycle with alcohol or other substances, it just robs us of our ability to believe in ourselves and see
And
ourselves in that way.
experiment. Not everything's so serious
Yes.
and has to be methodical or perfect. We get to be imperfectly imperfect, like
Yeah.
humans, like all humans. Just do it, wing it. It's fun.
It is fun. And when you see yourself get control over alcohol, again, just speaking from my experience, and you feel empowered in that way, and then you see yourself living life apart from alcohol and you're getting exposure to these new experiences. I mean, I just learned to like myself again. I realized when I was with like drinking as much as I was like, I don't think I liked myself. In fact, I think I hated myself on some level, the way I treated myself with alcohol. But learning to like yourself again and trust yourself again, respect yourself again, that's just like there's no alcohol buzz that can surpass that in my experience, especially with the help of naltrexone and that mental chatter, being
Mhm.
gone as well over
Yes.
time. So we've
Yeah.
talked a lot. Oh, were you going to say something?
No, I say we have these ideas in our head, and when we reduce our need to drink, and especially when we improve our neurotransmitters in our brain, we have a wider capacity to start to see things and feel things and do things with, you can't drive a car 1,000 miles on 2 gallons of gas. And that's kind of what happens with our neurotransmitters. They get depleted and you can't go very far with them. So I don't know if I said that earlier in our previous conversation, but that's why you need the other piece of this, that balancing piece that will help you become more playful and have the capacity and the quick-wittedness and the fun and the desire to be imperfect and wing it and see what the day brings, build that chair that was cattywampus if that's makes you happy, you can always
Yeah.
sell it as art, right?
Yeah.
No, it's those
Conceptual art.
sorts of, yeah, it's a piece of art. So I meant it to make it that way. So it's that willingness. And if you have a limited amount of neurotransmitters that are not allowing you to have the capacity to free yourself up, then you're suffering. For sure you're suffering.
Okay,
And there's no way.
it's a
Yeah. And
perfect
alcohol
segue.
has little to do with your ability to feel joy. It's your neurotransmitters being depleted. The
Okay.
alcohol helps with. So yeah.
Let's talk about that because that's a perfect segue. We've kind of talked about like changing our thinking and visioning our life and rethinking our relationship with alcohol and all of that. Tell us more about neurotransmitters and like the work that you've done to help people nutritionally with supplements as they're healing their relationship with alcohol. Because I think a lot of us maybe don't consider this. I clearly remember on my Sinclair Method journey, I was drinking a lot less and I was surprised that I didn't feel better. I thought I'd just be like full of vitality, bouncing out of bed in the morning. And I wasn't really considering nutrition and supplementation at the time. And I just wonder if that would have had an impact. So, talk to us about how nutrition, supplementation, things like that can help the brain heal so that we can actually have the motivation and the desire to do, these things apart from just drinking.
Yeah. The biggest aha moment I had was to learn that addiction and a lot of mental health um, issues are related to these low neurotransmitters, the starving brain. Literally, your brain is starving for the right amino acids to make your serotonin, your epinephrine, your endorphins, your catecholamines, your GABA, all of those, highly necessary neurotransmitters so that you're fully functional in the world. And so that and cofactors in eating and our changes in our body. So our food chain has changed a lot. There are a lot more chemicals in our food systems. Our soil's depleted. So there is that whole, high sugar, fast foods, hyper palatability, low nutrition. Fast food is exactly that. It's half plastic or something. I don't know. I don't eat fast food anymore. But so there's one thing. So if you are not even drinking and happen to be listening to this and you feel like low energy, brain foggy, it's probably because you have depleted neurotransmitters and you don't necessarily have to run off and get a medication. You can actually eat to support that. So depending on your age, as we age, we get to be less and less proficient at digesting food and proteins in particular. And so we have to do compensatory nutrition to help us absorb what we need to. So even if you're 20 and you're vigorous and you're an athlete, right, there's only so much absorbable protein from the food that we eat. For instance, about 35% of beef is what we digest and absorb. The rest it goes out. And same with an egg. An egg is highly absorbable, about 48%, but it's not 90, right? So supplementation so you have to eat enough protein to support yourself. But if you're older, like say over 40, over 50, maybe into your 60s, you're not absorbing even that much from the food that you're eating. So supplementing with amino acids can be a direct way to increase neurotransmitters. Now, through the work of Julia Ross and the other scientists working with her, they have developed an easy questionnaire, the amino acid therapy chart, and it's based on your symptoms, and we can pinpoint which neurotransmitters you are depleted in. The higher your score, the more depleted you are. And so that is a very useful tool. It's been used since the 80s. It works brilliantly. And so it gives us insight based on symptoms, what's happening with people. And I can see, for instance, if someone is on an SSRI or SNRI, something to help with anxiety, yet they're still feeling anxious and drinking, because a lot of people come to me on medications, right? Obviously, their medication is not helping their serotonin stores, right? It's not doing, so the medication isn't even working as well as it could be, because you don't have any input. There's no fuel for it to make more serotonin. So by replacing the medication with an amino acid, you can actually help the body make the right amount of serotonin for your personal pharmacy in your head, right? Because you are addicted to your own neurochemicals in your brain. And secondarily to the drug of abuse or the alcohol, which makes your brain like release more of your favorite serotonin, GABA, dopamine, endorphins, or catecholamines, you're secondarily addicted or want to drink or use drugs to get more of your own personal neurotransmitters. We really like our own endorphins. We're in love with them. And anything that makes my body excrete more, I'm going to want. And so that's part of that reward.
I've heard it said before that one way to think about it is we're not necessarily addicted to the alcohol, we're addicted to the endorphin reward. Would you say that that's true?
Yes, I would say that's true. Mm-hmm. And then beyond endorphins, because endorphins will also push the release of dopamine. So that's your get up and go and dance till 2 a.m, right? I feel so relaxed, I want to dance.
Okay. Yeah. And that for me is a helpful way to think about it. Because again, it's just maybe a bit more empowering to think, oh, I'm addicted to the substance. It's like, no, let me take a higher view. My brain's just looking for that endorphin, and there's other ways to get
lots of other ways, easy ways to produce endorphins. One of them, Dr. Daniel Amen talks about, and that's a little bit of dark chocolate.
Wow.
You can induce endorphin relief. Another one is if you live in a cold climate, and whether you cold plunge or whether you go outside and shovel snow for 2 hours, like I do where I live, you come in the house and it's warm, and then you're going to have a little cup of hot cocoa or get in a hot shower, and that's a huge release of endorphins as well. And so that cold to hot, eating the right foods, sex can produce a lot of endorphin release, if it's someone you like, especially. And then, so those, and sometimes you get a runner's high that can produce that endorphin release as well. So there are lots of different things. Sometimes certain frequencies you can listen to, or some Kundalini type meditation or practice, yoga. There are lots of different ways. I mean, every culture has looked for the way for that to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just I'm having kind of an aha moment right now. If people, who are stuck in especially habitual drinking with the Sinclair method, it's again, just seeing it, I need these endorphins. I don't necessarily need the alcohol. So let me try a cold plunge and see how I feel afterward. And I know for me, that was how I was stuck in habitual drinking for a while on TSM. And I'd be like, okay, I'm bored. Let me try another way to, combat the boredom, and then I'll see if I can drink. But I guess I wasn't aware that I was kind of doing that, like seeking out other ways to get endorphins rather than just immediately turning to alcohol.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and I think if we knew that, then developing those ways of having your body release the endorphins in your brain brings that wonderful sensation that you're looking for, the relaxation and almost a buzz, but not to the point of intoxication where you have a toxin in your body producing the artificial, but you get the real stuff, you get the real clean burn endorphins, if you want to put it
Yeah.
that way. And I should mention too, cold plunge is really good for men. Men's physiology, because they don't have that sub-Q fat, tend to warm up faster than women and tend to cool down faster than women because they don't have the subcutaneous fat. But women do better with heat. They tolerate heat much better. So while your husband might be jumping in a cold plunge, you might jump in the sauna instead because you're going to get that same endorphin release from relaxing and warming up the body and not having to take more time to come out of being cold because your subcutaneous fat is got to warm up, which takes a little bit more time. So,
Okay.
yeah, women do better in warm and men do better with cold
So
plunge.
And I really want people to like hear this, especially if you're like starting TSM or you're in the middle of it. Like, again, it's just a perspective shift. And Dr. Perron is so good at that, just helping you think about things differently. And just that alone can get you going on a completely new trajectory. But just thinking about if you feel like, oh, like I'm not making progress, I'm drinking too much, I just love alcohol. No, you love the endorphins that alcohol provides you. Grab some dark chocolate, get in a hot bath or a sauna. And this isn't to say like don't drink and only do these things. This is like little steps that you can take
Yes.
to try to get the reward in another way. In worst case scenario, you still want to drink, you take your Naltrexone and
Yeah.
drink.
Yeah. But it's that also opening up to the possibility. Another place I see rigidity and many people come to me already have started their TSM journey and not seeing the progress that they want to have. And so when we talk about maybe taking a night off or being an observer when you go to a party, but you're choosing not to drink and you want to see how that's going to go, people will say, well, either I'm going to have wine or I'm going to have ice water. And I say, no, that's no. Like I'm taking my ball and I'm going home because well, should we give you just like the end of a piece of bread with your ice water while everyone has dinner too? It's people, they have this black and whiteness about it's either or, it's not and. And I'm always teaching and, meaning there's a whole lot of things between water and alcohol to drink. There's the kombuchas, there's the NA beers, there's the mocktails that go on forever. There's lemonade, there's Arnold Palmer, there's 7 Up, there's soda water with a lime or anything else. I mean, you can ask for chocolate milk in a wine glass, and I'll be darned if the bartender won't bring it to you
Yeah,
because they want money. They want your money. And if you ask for anything in a wine glass, try it sometime. They'll bring it. They'll bring exactly what you want in a wine glass.
yeah,
And then
absolutely.
you have that. If you were to close your eyes with the wine glass and just be drinking and have something that was maybe sort of wine tasting, and so your brain would like perceive it as the act of drinking. Sometimes you have to remind yourself that you haven't had anything to drink. Like, have you ever been to a party where there's been a lot of people and dancing and activity? All the cues, like 100 cues for drinking, were there, but you were there for the socialness, and then you get home and you're getting ready for bed and you're like kind of buzzing from the night out, and you have to remind, no, I won't have a headache in the morning because I'm actually not drunk, but my body says, oh, all the cues are there, so I'm going to release extra endorphins so that you feel a little bit woozy when you get home. It's
Wow.
crazy.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's just so insightful. And I think to your point of just like not being restrictive to yourself, like give yourself permission to be indulgent, whether it is a chocolate milk or chocolate or whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
for me, having those rewards was really helpful.
Yeah.
Because alcohol was a reward for me. So it's like, what's another reward? And I just found that there's so many different ways to experience joy and pleasure in life apart from alcohol. When for 10 years, my brain was just hyper fixated on alcohol. And I was like,
Yes.
I was living in such like like a narrow-minded kind of way.
Yeah, a
Just
narrow band there, stay on track,
yes.
absolutely.
When I'm like, there's a whole world out there. I wasn't even paying attention to it. And it's so nice to do those simple joys that really nourish your soul. I mean, I just was with friends last night. We were laughing around dinner and I didn't have a drink. They were having wine, but no one was getting drunk. But it was so much fun, and it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, I used to need alcohol in situations like that and to not
And you
need
can
it
be
is,
so much more authentic in that space.
yes,
And so then that social outing becomes about the socialness of it and the connection with other people. That's what really feeds us.
yes.
Alcohol is efficient to get us from A to B in the shortest distance possible, but it's not a lasting connection. It's not a long-term brain building exercise. But when we connect with other people, it also releases oxytocin, which alcohol doesn't do. So
Mm.
that's the bonding, feel good connectedness that brings deep and profound and lasting joy. Oxytocin is like the bomb. And you like if you have a child, the bonding chemical is oxytocin. It's also the chemical that allows your hips to dislocate. So you could pass that baby out.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
So your joints get kind of loose, and you have to be careful with that after you have a baby. You find that out, in pregnancy.
Okay. Okay.
And so, but yeah, there's lots you find out in pregnancy that you
Yeah.
didn't know before.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've
Like, what?
heard.
It's 10 months? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So those sorts of things, just learning how my body works. It's kind of like we live in our own personal spacecraft. We just have to stick our hands in the gel to know how to fly the thing, right? There's no instructions. We just have to feel around. It's blue gel. We stick our hands in there and go, okay, fly. You know?
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, so I wanted to go back before I forget because you mentioned an easy like questionnaire or something for amino acid therapy. Is that something you provide to people or where can they
Yes.
find that?
Yeah. I have a link on that. If they want to do, if you're like a booky person and like to read a lot, The Mood Cure by Julia Ross is
Okay.
the best book that has everything in there that I learned. I went to school for 18 months to become certified in amino acid therapy and functional medicine assessment. But if you want to do it yourself, that is a very helpful book. It's meaty, so be prepared to read a lot of research and so forth. But it does have the questionnaire in there, which will lead you to where to go and what to start with, and that's the other thing I offer. A free 30-minute consultation for people who want to ask questions and decide what they want to do, or we'll fit a regimen of appointments so that it fits your time and money and schedule so that we can help you. I like to help people do it correctly. And I like to also look up if there's any contraindications between medications or supplements that they're already taking, and what conditions, chronic conditions they might have where they shouldn't be taking X, Y, or Z. And it's a good precaution to have somebody cross-check for you,
Yeah.
make sure that what you're doing is not going to be harmful. Because sometimes combinations can lead to serious complications. Like if you are on an SSRI, you don't ever want to be taking an amino acid that's going to affect that SSRI so that you develop something called serotonin syndrome, which can be very dangerous and even fatal. So you
Wow.
don't want to go down that path. So that's why it's important to check to somebody who knows like how to do that and how to make sure that you're not going to get hurt. Now, your regular doctor isn't going to know anything about amino acids because
Right.
that's not taught in medical school. Um, but there are amino acid therapists and people that have been trained like I have, and that can be found at the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition. There is a directory there of people in all over the world who are certified like I am in helping people take the right amino acids and not affecting themselves adversely. So
Okay. Yeah. And, oftentimes people, when they hear interviews like this, they're like, okay, what's like one or two supplements I can take that can help me? Are there general supplements that are helpful for everyone and everyone needs,
yeah,
or is it more individualized with how
yeah,
you work with people?
yeah. They're general. The best one. I love this one because it's so simple. Eat 20 to 30 grams of protein 3 to 4 times a day. Don't expect that you're going to be able to do that on day one, by the way, unless you're already doing it. It takes a while to work yourself up to that. Especially if you're eating twice a day or you're not used to eating breakfast, when you start to introduce 10, 15, 20 grams of breakfast, you're not really that hungry the first day for lunch. It takes a while for your appetite to catch up with the amount of protein that you're consuming. So
Okay.
that's a gradual process, but you want to be eating more protein. That's number one.
And what does that do for people? Like, what could they expect to see as a result?
They're going to have more energy, less brain fog. Their neurotransmitters are going to improve. Their digestion may be cattywampus for a little bit, but you make sure that you're digesting properly, and there are things we can do to help your digestion with more protein in the mix. So that's the first thing, more protein. Secondly, a good multivitamin, and not a cheap one, and not an enterically coated one. Okay, you have to be taking one that is well formulated. Pure Encapsulations has some really good ones. That's a reputable brand. It's a good quality brand. It costs a little more, but it's worth it because their formulas are clean and they're good for you. So you want to take a high quality multivitamin, and then of course, fish oil is also very good. And you're looking for small fish, even krill oil, or if you don't want to take a bunch of pills, then eat sardines. Learn how to love sardines. Like if you eat 2 or 3 cans of sardines a week, it might sound like a lot, but mix them up like you would tuna. Just think of them as tuna, make a tuna salad or sandwich or something. I've learned to really love tuna. I mean, sardines even more than tuna because they're so good for you and they are rich in omega-3, DHA, and EPA that are really important for brain function and body function. So those are really good if you don't want to take a supplement. Otherwise, you can take fish oil. Make sure you're getting one that's fresh. There's some kind of freshness dates on it. If you can afford Fatty 15, that's a newer supplement, but it's quite expensive, but it is like the best in terms of fatty acids that your body needs. But other ones are quite good. Nordic Naturals has a good one. Ocean Blue has a good one. Okay. So, and that's all available easily on Amazon.
Okay.
Those would be the 3 things I would recommend.
Okay.
For everybody.
Very practical and helpful, and I think accessible for most people. And it's funny you said that about sardines because from our friend Dr. Umhow, who always talks about omega-3s, I got them in the can and I started eating them and I love them. They are so good. They like you put a little lemon on them and they're so tender and they're not super fishy. So
I like the smoked ones.
Oh,
and my grandson when he was 5 years old, he said, "What's this, Nana?" Because I had the round can, the bristle ones, where they weave the sardines together and they're smoked and they look beautiful in the can because it's a clear top. So my grandson saw these, and ever since he thought they were the coolest thing ever. He'll come over and we'll eat sardines together. He's now 10 and we still eat sardines together.
Love it.
Yeah.
Don't knock it till you try it. I'm telling you.
Yeah. There are lots of good sardines. You got to try. Like my suggestion is if you've never eaten sardines, go buy one of each brand that's available to you and see which ones you like the best.
Yeah.
And what you don't eat, your cat or dog will be happy to eat for you.
Yeah. I have a couple more questions for you. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I know you've talked, because in the workshops you've taught inside Thrive, you've talked about, I think you had one on like sleep and how to have a healthier sleep routine. And so many people, as you know, use alcohol to fall asleep. They're aware that it's not a deep, helpful sleep, but it's like a pattern they're stuck in. Can you talk about, I think I've heard you say that like our sleep cycle is like a dishwasher cycle and how alcohol interrupts that, and any tips or information you want to share on that topic?
Yeah. So we have sleep cycles. We'll go to sleep. We have light sleep. We have deep sleep, and then REM, right? That's part of the light sleep cycle. So your body will go through. Now I have a tracker of my sleep, which is really helpful. A lot of people have trackers. I'm getting a new one too to get heart rate in there. But what we want to do is we need the deep sleep for the brain to recover and for you to be functional the next day. And what alcohol does is keeps you in REM, it keeps you in light sleep, so you don't get that restorative sleep that deep sleep provides. And also, there's a tendency to wake up when your body has metabolized away a certain amount of alcohol, depending on how much you're drinking, that you have a rebound so that you'll wake up at 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning. And that's because to compensate for homeostasis, when your body gets depressed from the alcohol, once the alcohol is burned out, to compensate, your body has been producing epinephrine. So once the alcohol burns off, then all of a sudden you have all this epinephrine, and that's what wakes you up in the morning. That's what gives you the shakes, the sweats, the headache, is this increase in epinephrine. So to stop that rebound effect of your own personal stimulants, right? If you drink less, that's going to be a step in the right direction, which is great. Naltrexone helps right away there. But also you want to take those steps secondarily to make your biorhythm work. So when we wake up in the morning, getting the sunlight in your eyes for 15 minutes, here days are getting shorter, but get out there, look out your window, or get out on your back deck and just open your eyes and let the sun come in, and shiver a little bit, and then go back in the house and take your shower. So getting sunlight, because that tells your body it's daytime, and it'll stimulate all your neurotransmitters for your daytime function. And then usually you'll eat lunch, and then we all have sort of a dip in the afternoon, and that's when blood sugar dips. Also, along with that, your willpower dips with your glucose. And so that's where the English tea, they had it right. They had it right, thinking to take some tea, which is caffeine stimulant, and a little bit of sugar, which is your crumpets and clotted cream, right? That helps bring your willpower back up again, that late afternoon snack. So I suggest, rather than tea and crumpets, I think having a high protein, high fat, like a hard boiled egg, or a hard boiled egg sandwich, or on crackers or something, or maybe peanut butter on a log, on a celery stick, like you give your kids, or something that's a beef stick. Chew on that with a couple chunks of cheese or whatever. That will help replete your glucose in your body, or your sugar, without spiking your insulin like a crazy person with a sugary snack, which is what we tend to do. Like having a soda or a pop, where I come from, having a Coke or Pepsi, that's not so good at late afternoon, or a cup of coffee. You're better off having some protein, which gives you that fourth dose a day before you get home to eat dinner. So that's huge. And then at night, then, when it gets dark, it's important to have, and this I can't stress more, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about, dimmer switches on all of your lights, so that in bedrooms, especially if you have children, if you have trouble putting them down at night, think about how much wattage am I putting on these children. They need to have a night light, so they can start to have low lighting, about an hour before bedtime, so they can wind down and stop jumping off the walls, and craziness that little kids can be, so that they start to understand the biorhythm. Like when the sun goes down, it doesn't just snap off like a light switch, right? It goes down gradually. The sun has a dimmer switch on it. So that informs our existence on the planet. And so it helps us, with the advent of modern electricity, to have dimmer switches, so we can mimic when the sun goes down, which settles us down and gets us ready. And our heart rate can go down a little bit. Our body temperature needs to go down, so we fall asleep. So a cooler room to sleep in. So some of these things, we call it sleep etiquette, so that we're going to sleep in the right, no more blue screens, maybe read a book, have a quiet conversation. People do yoga before bed, which can be helpful. So just getting your biorhythms back in order can help. And of course, if you're doing all these other things, you're forgetting to take a sip of your wine,
Yeah,
because by
that's
the
so
time
true.
it's bedtime, you're going to fall asleep.
That's so true. And even like, I don't know, I would imagine it'd be helpful if someone is using alcohol to fall asleep. It's like, what would be one step in the direction they could take if they're stuck in that routine to drink until they pass out, basically? Could they try to stop a little earlier and integrate some of these like
Yep.
bedtime routines?
Yep. That's exactly what I would suggest. And it's not either or, it's an and. We must always think in terms of and. I can do this and I can do that. Not like I can do that or I can do that, because that's scary to change, because it's a big habit. Even if you cross your arms, right? If I ask you to turn around how you cross your arms, it takes you a minute to figure out, how does that look? Like I have to think, how
It's
do I
true.
do that to change that? And that's just crossing my arms. Well, alcohol or other habits like that are even more difficult to change. So we have to include more things. Like I'm going to hold my cat, which is going to make it easier for me to change the way I'm crossing my arms, right? So in the same way, if I add, well, I'm going to go upstairs at 8 o'clock and I'm going to do yoga for 20 minutes. And I can have my wine on my bedstand like usual, but I'm going to do yoga for 20 minutes. And then I'm going to hydrate, because that's cleansing and good. And then I'm going to stay up because I need to pee one more time before bed. And then, so we do that. We start adding things to it to cause it to be less time to drink. And that's the best way to do it. Like or give yourself a window. Like that's really good. Like a drinking window. I'm going to drink
Yeah.
from 6 to 8, or 6 to 9, or
Yeah.
6 to 10, or there's no good to be had after midnight drinking, or whatever you have to tell yourself to have a drinking window, or a
Yeah.
curfew. I start whenever I start, but I'm done drinking by 9 p.m. every night.
Yeah.
Curfew works, right?
Yeah.
Or a wingman. Have your spouse, your husband, your roommate, whatever, say tell them, state out loud, tonight I'm going to drink 3 drinks. So if you see me going for a 4th one, just here's the magic word, say Rumpelstiltskin. And then we won't argue and I'll know that you're just looking out for me and I gave you permission to do that.
I love that. Yeah.
I once gave a couple the word lasagna, and then I met with her a week later and I said, so how's it going this week? She goes, I don't know. We've had a lot of lasagna this week.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so my final question for you before we wrap up and you can share all your information and how people can contact you. And forgive me because I know you did a whole workshop on this in Thrive and you were like, we could break that into like 3 workshops or something. But generally speaking, women and hormones, whether they're still having their cycle or they're going toward menopause or anywhere in between, you work with women in that way, right? Because there can be such an impact depending on where we are in our cycle or if we're in menopause or premenopause on how it impacts our craving and our drinking. Can you speak just a little bit about that so people can know how you help women here?
Yeah, the most important thing you need to know is when you ovulate, you're more likely to drink more, especially that week right before your period and the days right before your period. You are more likely to relapse. In fact, most women relapse at a much higher rate during that period. And so what I do with clients is I have them take certain amino acids at a higher dose during those days to help override that dive in hormones that causes all this. I don't even want to be in the same room with myself at those times, right? Yeah. So if we can help ourselves feel better from the inside out, we do that because it can deplete neurotransmitters. So that's one thing. You will have a cycle, and typically right around your period and ovulation in there, you're going to have that fall in your hormones and you're going to want to drink more. You're going to eat chocolate more. You're going to feel bloated more. Like all that is in play. So increasing certain amino acids can be very helpful. And then as we get older, the other play is as we lose progesterone and estrogen, then we start having body changes. We start losing our hair. We might start losing our muscle tone. There are amino acids and combinations of those that can make a world of difference to keep your muscle tone. You don't even have to exercise. Okay. I mean, this stuff is amazing. And also, learning what foods can be helpful during menopause and what foods are not helpful. And that's another piece. And also knowing that as we age, our body manages alcohol differently because it takes longer to process it out. So less is more. And that's really important. If you want to maintain health and not be in harm's way or at higher risk for breast cancer or any of those sorts of things, then limiting alcohol is like a good health decision. And so it's not that you have to give it up. It's I'm going to have a glass of wine and I'm going to have this other thing I really like a kombucha that's non-alcoholic or some sort of tea that, like, I don't know if you've tried pea flower.
No, I haven't.
It's purple. And I don't know, my mind is fascinated that it's purple. And so I drink it because my brain says, I like this.
I like drinking something purple.
Yes.
Oh, but...
yeah. Pea flower tea. So there's lots. So you have to know that if you're addicted to something, to mind alter, your brain is going to be happy with new and different. So the more new and different things you can do, the more satisfied you feel, so that you can add that to your drinking so that you're not drinking as much. It'll become replacements or delays or starting later or stopping sooner. And that's how you do it. You don't just cut the whole bush down at once. You take little bits, you prune it until you get it to the size and shape that you want it to be.
Yeah.
That's the best. What I've found with people, if you just pull the rug out from under them, which is the all or nothing idea, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for the long term. So if we slowly start to change the environment and just add good things and build the brain back up so you have the capacity to function well in your life, then this alcohol thing is going to be a thing of the past in short order.
Yeah. Well, this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Michele, Dr. Perron. I always call you Michele, but Dr. Perron, I just have to I highly recommend anyone who's learned something or been interested or is intrigued to work with you, reach out because like you said, you offer a free consult. So you can always chat with her to see if it's a good fit. But I just think you are so helpful in so many areas, like a holistic Sinclair Method journey where people are thinking differently, they're feeding their body, their brain, and you do it in such a gentle, approachable, non-judgmental, relatable way. So how can people find you and learn more about you and perhaps work with you?
Oh, well, to say with you in Thrive Alcohol Recovery, I'm listed as a coach, so they can find me in your company. They can also come to my website, which is www.drmichelleperron.com, and that's Dr. Michelle with one L and Perron with two R's. So drmichelleperron.com. Or if you want to read like more about me and who I am and my resume and all that, I'm on LinkedIn under Michele D. Perron, PhD. Apparently there are like 35 Michele Perrons on LinkedIn.
Oh,
So you have to do Michele D. Perron, PhD.
okay.
And
And
you'll
I'll put
find,
your link below too,
yeah,
for people to
yeah.
find you. And if anyone has questions, you can reach out and I can send you over to her.
And there are YouTube, like I have I think probably 10 podcasts that I've done interviews on too that talk a lot about and different presentations that have been recorded that are also online. So
Okay,
you can
very
find
cool.
those in YouTube just by putting my name in.
Search your name. Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Well, any
Pretty
final
simple.
words from you before we wrap up?
Yes. After working with Thrive for all this time and moving into the moderation space in the last 8 years, and the changes I've seen in clients over all these years, like dramatic changes in weeks and months, and joy and happiness and expansion and buying businesses and moving into better homes and careers just exploding and just wonderful. Like people win the lottery. That's just crazy. Like the wonderful things that begin to happen to my clients. I would like to say I'm on a mission to disrupt treatment as we know it. Because the sad, serious, difficult struggle of addiction is hard enough without having all of that negative energy being reinforced. It's time for us to look at this in a humanistic way, in a joyful way. Let's fix this together. And let's not be Debbie Downers about it. Because joy will bring me up, not negative, punitive, yelling, screaming, got to do this. It's about, in a humanistic, loving way, how do we get better together? Because when you get better, I get better, everybody gets better.
Yeah.
And I would like to see that change. I want people to be joyfully learning to moderate and really thinking about the quality of a life they want to have and not trying to run from a demon that is impossible to outrun.
Yes. That's a powerful mindset shift. And for people to think about healing from alcohol in that way, I just love that so much. And we need to disrupt the treatment. And we're doing it, one person at a
Yeah.
time. We really are. And your work is so commendable. So thank you for everything you do for, just this community and helping people get well and live a really robust, fulfilling life.
People say, does it depress you to work with all these
Huh.
problems? And I say no, because for me it's not depressing. For me it's a challenge, and it's very rewarding when someone's shoulders drop and their stress really just goes away. You can watch it wash out of them. And I really enjoy the work that I do. I love all my clients. I don't know, the universe brings me the most wonderful people to work with, and it's just a, I don't know, a very rewarding career. And I wouldn't change a thing. It's fun. It's fun to see relief and improvement and movement upward. And now that I do it in this way, I see more of that every day.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's not depressing at all. It's exciting because you see people get better and there's hope and change and yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been such an awesome conversation. Again, I'll link Michelle's website below so you guys can reach out and learn more about her. You can also search YouTube, just done other interviews. Thank you so much, Michele. I'll talk to you again soon.
Ew.
Bye.
Ew.